What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back. And as always, thank you for joining me. My name is Paul Brettel, and we're here to talk about my big observations and takeaways from the Green Bay Packers' fourth training camp practice that took place on Saturday. But first, before we dive into that, quickly, you can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. You can follow all my work over at Dairyland Express as well as Packers Wire. And please hit like, hit subscribe on the video on the YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate it. Now, let's dive into my big observations and takeaways. First up, on the injury front, those on the PUP list, those on the NFI list, everything stayed the same in that regard. Dontavian Wicks, who has been out since Thursday's practice with a concussion, was still not participating. And Tucker Kraft began the day playing, but exited and had ice wrapped around his right thigh. Haven't been any updates on that. Packers' next practice takes place on Monday. The pads will be fully on. We'll see if he's back on the field at that time, along with Dontavian Wicks. So now into the lineups. One big change was that Tucker Kraft was out there with the starters in the Packers' two tight end sets. Now, if you've been watching these videos previously, it is not unusual that the Green Bay Packers are using a heavy dose of 12 personnel or two tight ends on the field. They use 12 personnel at the second highest rate in 2022. And based on what we've seen so far through training camp, it again is going to be a huge, huge part of their offense this season. But Tucker Kraft being out there with the starters, that is what's new. Typically, it's been Luke Musgrave and Josiah DeGuara. Today, it was Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. The Kraft has been behind DeGuara, Musgrave, and even Tyler Davis up to this point. As far as other starters go, pretty similar to what we've seen. Zach Tom continues to get the start at right tackle. By this time, we're now 4 practices in. That's been the norm. He, I assume, is the leader in the clubhouse, so to say, for that starting right tackle position. But of course, the pads aren't on yet, and there's a lot of time for things to change. Justin Hollins initially started at edge rusher with Preston Smith, which again has been pretty common. But Lucas Van Ness, Packers' first round pick in this year's draft, he saw a lot of snaps with the first team offense, and got a comment up here coming up shortly here on his performance. Really impressive. The safeties again, Rudy Ford, Darnell Savage, not a surprise. Those two have been cemented in as the starters. Ford has the experience in the defense, provided stability, some playmaking, willing tackler. Again, I've said it before, not a surprise that he's been back there starting with Savage. The third and fourth safety options are Jonathan Owens and Tarvarius Moore. And in this safety competition, I really feel that those four have established themselves as the top 4. And then, of course, there's Dallin Leavitt, who is going to be on this team as a key special teams contributor. And then we'll see if he's called upon at all to play safety, but going to guess he's just there to be a special teams player. But there seems to be a divide beginning to form within that safety room. And odds are at most the Packers are going to keep 5 players at that position. When the Packers were in their nickel defense with just 2 interior defenders because they have Keyshawn Nixon on the field in the slot, Kenny Clark and TJ Slaton have been the go-to options in terms of who they're playing on the interior defensive line. When in the nickel, at least as of now, it does seem that TJ Slaton is ahead of Devonte Wyatt in that regard, and I'm guessing that has to do with his ability to play against the run. When the Packers are in their 3-4 base defense with 3 interior defenders, it's been, as Brian Gutekunst said, their anchors, Kenny Clark, TJ Slaton, and Devonte Wyatt. And speaking of Wyatt, Matt LaFleur made the comment earlier or before practice about consistency with young players. And he wasn't speaking to Wyatt specifically, but just in general, young players, it's about having that consistency. And for Wyatt, that's what we're hoping to see. But what I will say, when he flashes, specifically as a pass rusher, he really, really flashes, making his way into the backfield, doing so really quickly, doing so with power, doing so with speed. When he has a good pass rush rep, everybody sees that good pass rush rep. During individual drills, of note, very interesting, Keyshawn Nixon was catching passes with the offense. LaFleur was asked actually back in March about the idea of using Keyshawn Nixon on offense. Of course, he has a dynamic playmaking ability with the ball in his hands. We saw that on kick returns, on punt returns last season. And LaFleur said he's absolutely open to the idea. But in order to have Nixon out there on the field, he first has to consistently hold down the slot position on defense. And LaFleur said he has to continue making progress as a return man. So those are the two boxes that have to be checked before the Packers then begin thinking about adding some offensive responsibilities to his plate. And if or when we see Keyshawn Nixon on offense at all, he might be lined up in the slot or out wide, but I can't imagine he's going to be out there running routes. He might be out there as a gadget player in motion to either draw the defense's attention or get him the ball behind the line of scrimmage, again in space where he can make plays, or maybe he'll get some opportunities to get some screens thrown his way. But that if he is on offense, that's going to be the capacity in which he's used. I just can't imagine that he's going to be out there running a ton of routes by any means. At tight end, Tyler Davis. He continues to hold up really, really well as a blocker. I think I said on the last video, he might be the best or most consistent blocking tight end that the Green Bay Packers have right now. And he had a really, really nice rep against Lucas Van Ness. If Tyler Davis continues to perform this well as a blocker, he is absolutely going to have a role carved out within this offense. Now, we've talked about it on here, the steep learning curve that comes with rookie tight ends making the transition from college to the NFL. Matt LaFleur said after the quarterback position, it's the second most difficult jump on the offensive side of the ball. And one of the more challenging aspects of that already difficult transition is blocking. Luke Musgrave on Thursday in the locker room with us after practice talked about how that's been the toughest part for him. So if the Packers can find a steady contributor as a blocker to utilize in their offense in Tyler Davis, they are absolutely going to. And what I will say about this tight end group, DeGuara, Davis, Musgrave, and Kraft, all four, at least from what I've seen so far, they're going to have roles this season. Musgrave has been identified as the starter. Josiah DeGuara fills more of that H-back role. Tyler Davis as the blocker. And then you got Tucker Kraft, who had some very, very good production in terms of yards after the catch during his career at South Dakota State. So all of those guys can bring a different element to the offense. And at least, like I said, as of now, it looks like the Packers plan to use all of them within the offense this season. During the first two live practices, or full speed practices, I should say, on Wednesday and Thursday, I thought the front seven, the interior defensive line, did pretty well holding up against the run. But today, the interior offensive line in particular did a really good job creating some running lanes. This was the first day, and I know it's only the third practice at full speed, but the first one where you could see those running lanes open up for the Packers ball carriers. Now, let's jump back to Lucas Van Ness. Like I said, pads come out on Monday, and I cannot wait to see him in those pads. His burst, his power, his sheer power. He's called his nickname Hercules for a reason. It's something else. It's really something else to watch, and I really can't wait to see the pads come on. Van Ness talked about this after Saturday's practice, how he's excited for that as well, because it'll really display the strengths of his game. And there was one play today where he absolutely drove Josiah DeGuara, and I mean pushed him into the backfield. The play had to be blown dead because just to make sure that Jordan Love wasn't caught, in DeGuara being pushed back. It was a really, really impressive rep. And one other thing that I'll add about Van Ness, obviously his pass rush ability is what's going to stand out. It's what leaps off the screen when you're watching him. It's what you notice first if you're in person watching him as well. But even going back to off-season programs and in training camp here so far, he's had several really, really nice run defense reps as an edge rusher. He sets a very, very strong edge. There was one practice rep today where A.J. Dillon was trying to bounce outside because Van Ness had position and didn't overcommit by going into the backfield. A.J. Dillon had to go cut back towards the middle, and waiting for him was T.J. Slayton for a run that at best would have been 0 yards, but probably was a lost yard or two. So for a rookie known for his pass rush ability, I've been impressed with that aspect of Van Ness's game. And the Packers edge rusher room as a whole, that run defense element is one area where they absolutely have to improve this season. Anders Carlson, he's been pretty steady up to this point. And again, small sample size alert, but he's been solid overall during mini camp. He went 11 for 12 over the 2 days in training camp here. I believe he's missed just one of his first 6 attempts. But today, not so much. He went 1 for 6 during the first session of field goal attempts. He missed all 3 of his kicks between 40 and 45 yards, and then between 50 and 55 yards, he was just 1 for 3. He has a really big leg, but as Matt LaFleur has pointed out to us before, as he's mentioned, it's about consistency. He has to find that. And today we saw that roller coaster ride that comes with relying on a young kicker. Brian Gutekunst was asked during Tuesday's press conference if they're going to look into bringing in another kicker for training camp. And as he says, they're not going to close the door on anything. But the vibe that I get is they're absolutely going to give Carlson plenty of opportunities this summer, get those reps in, get those opportunities in, and see what they have, 2, 3, 4 weeks from now before they decide whether or not they want to go that route and adding a kicker. On the first 3 field goal attempts, Pat O'Donnell was the holder. And on the second 3 field goal attempts, Daniel Whelan was the holder. So let's transition to the punter position. I still consider Pat O'Donnell to be the favorite to be the Packers punter this season. If from a salary cap standpoint, if the Packers were to cut him, I believe they save just $1.5 million in cap space. Not to say that the Packers can't use additional cap space, but that's not enough on its own to dictate the decision. Also, O'Donnell has experience as a holder. That's one of the big reasons they signed him last offseason, to bring stability. So when you have a rookie kicker, having a veteran holder who's been doing this for years, again, there's a lot of value in having that. So I still have him as the favorite. However, Daniel Whelan, who was signed earlier this offseason, played in the XFL during the spring. Again, he really, really packs some power. Rob Demovsky of ESPN was tracking his punt attempts today at practice. Whelan had 12 kicks, averaged 52 yards, and this included half of those kicks going into the wind. Not that it was a stiff breeze by any means, but still half of them were going into the wind. And his average hang time was 4.56 seconds. If the Packers are just simply comparing who has the bigger leg, who has more power, who has more hang time, Whelan has the advantage over Pat O'Donnell in that regard. But again, as we just talked about, there's other aspects to this as well. But it's something to monitor. The Packers are obviously going with the rookie kicker to try to find their kicker of the future. And who knows, maybe if this competition ends up being close, if Whelan's able to impress them enough, maybe in a transition year with Jordan Love, they're willing to do the same at the punter, hoping that Whelan can show that he is the long-term solution at that position. So something to keep our eyes on. Continuing on, Tyler Goodson, he is being used all over the place. It very much feels, if we go back, I think it's 2 years ago now, Tyler Ervin, it very much feels like Tyler Goodson is going to fill a similar Tyler Ervin-like role in this Packers offense. Just today alone, first off, saw him returning punts, but on offense, he was lined up out wide. He was lined up in the slot. He was lined up in the backfield. He was used as a motion man, fake to him on an end around. He is being used in every capacity. He's catching passes when he's lined up out wide. He's being a ball carrier when he's in the backfield. He's bringing that do-it-all, that versatile aspect to the running back position and just to this offense in general that we know is so important to what Matt LaFleur wants to accomplish. I think right now he's running back 3 based on everything I've seen. Also at the running back position, I thought that Lou Nichols, rookie 7th round pick out of Central Michigan, had a really strong day. I thought that this was his best day as a ball carrier. Excellent burst, good vision, and he's a physical runner. To me, those two right now are ahead of Patrick Taylor in terms of who's going to be that third running back. On punt return duties, in addition to Tyler Goodson, Jaden Reed, Keyshawn Nixon, and Samori Toure were back there. Keyshawn Nixon and Rudy Ford were the opening flyers for the punt coverage team, followed by Ennis Gaines as well as Corey Ballantyne. Jordan Love. Let's get to Jordan Love. This was his best all-around performance in a practice so far, in a training camp practice. Again, Demovsky tracked Love's day, and he had him completing 16 of 22 passes. The first day of practice, the emphasis was third downs. The second full speed practice, the emphasis was red zone. And today, the emphasis was on 2-minute drill prior to halftime. So to end practice, the first team offense was out on the field. And here's just a quick rundown of what happened. There was a minute 41 on the clock in the scenario. Packers were starting at their own 20 again, and it was leading up until halftime. On the first play, there was a really, really quick pressure from the interior. Love just had to throw the ball away. On the second play, he connected with Christian Watson on a crossing route over the middle. On the third play, a handoff to A.J. Dillon, who, again, found a nice hole following Josh Myers and Elton Jenkins on the left side of the offensive line. On the fourth play, Love hit Watson was going to Watson for a quick slant, but Rasul Douglas was absolutely all over it. Got the pass breakup. The fifth play and the absolute play of the day, the Packers in their team drills, not just in this 2-minute portion, but in the team drills, they'd been running a lot of out routes, a lot of quick outs. And so Samori Toure is lined up on the left side. Rasul Douglas is in coverage. Samori runs a quick out to the left side. Again, Packers have been running that a lot. Rasul Douglas gets aggressive, thinks he's going for the pass breakup. All of a sudden, Samori Toure turns upfield, has a step or two on Douglas with that move. Savage, the safety's coming over for help, but Love drops a beautiful pass where only Toure could get it. Toure said this in the locker room afterwards. If the pass is a little bit too far left of where it was, it's going to force him or drift him out of bounds. If it's a little bit right of where it was, Savage probably gets there in time to break it up. It was placed perfectly. It was a beautiful route. It was a beautiful throw by Jordan Love. Just an excellent play all around, and it went for roughly 33 yards. On the sixth play, again, A.J. Dillon found some room running to the left side. On the seventh play, Packers are at the 5-yard line. There's 6 seconds left before half. Love again throws one of those quick outs to Luke Musgrave, who catches it, but the cornerback's right there to make a play, forces him out of bounds at the 1-yard line. On the eighth play, Anders Carlson comes in, 18-yard field goal attempt with 2 seconds to go, knocks it through the upright. So in this scenario, before half, Packers come away with 3 points. The second and third team offenses also went through the 2-minute drill. Danny Etling was with the second team. Sean Clifford was with the third team. But unlike with Love and the starters, this went absolutely nowhere. It was quick 3 and outs for each of these quarterbacks. So again, the defense won the day, and afterwards the offense had to do some more up downs. Something to keep our eyes on is the exchange on the snap between Josh Myers and Jordan Love. There was another botch snap fumble between the two today, and that's the second one that's occurred so far in 3 practices. So I'm sure there's an adjustment for each of them, learning to work together. But again, just something to keep our eyes on. It's a talented cornerback room. We all know that. There's a ton of high-end talent, a ton of depth, figuring out who's going to be that 5th, 6th option. And I mean, do the Packers keep 7? I'm guessing no, but that's always in play if they want to go really heavy at that position. But anyway, a name to keep your eyes on is KeAndre Thomas. KeAndre Thomas had a really, really good 2022 preseason for Green Bay. I believe he was targeted 8 times in those 3 games, allowed just 1 completion, was also very, very solid as a tackler. And in today's practice, he had 2 pass breakups. So just another name to keep our eyes on. And then lastly, again, I've talked about this before, but Jordan Love in this offense, they're absolutely attacking the middle of the field. That's different than what the Aaron Rodgers offenses of previous years did, but we're going to see a lot of that. It's been evident since going back to OTAs and minicamp, and we're seeing it here in training camp as well. There's a ton of speed on this Packers offense. Christian Watson, Luke Musgrave, Jaden Reed, attacking the middle of the field, gets them in space, gives them yards after the catch opportunities, another way to create big plays other than looking for that deep shot downfield. So expect this Packers team to play a lot of 12 personnel, as we just discussed, and to really attack the middle of the field, something that they've done, again, this entire offseason. So there you have it, my friends. That's my quick rundown of my big observations, big takeaways from today's practice. As always, I really appreciate you tuning in and joining me. You can find all my work over at Dairyland Express as well as Packers Wire. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. And as always, please hit like, hit subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. So until next time, friends, take care, stay safe, and go Pack Go.